That's the problem, right?
Thank you. We're moving to item 4.1 on the agenda, and this is an item that I asked to place on the agenda because of all the priorities that we've been discussing lately, the primary way we as board members and others are going to achieve a lot of these priorities is through effective leadership throughout our system. And I had the good pleasure of meeting Josh Weiner on a recent trip to Washington, D.C. to find out a little bit more about what the Aspen Institute is doing to develop a pipeline of leaders across the nation and community colleges. And I was captivated by some of the work that they're doing, not only to spotlight the best practices and the best community colleges program that you're leading, but also the tools that you're providing. And as a longtime board member who's participated in a couple of presidential searches that didn't turn out as I had hoped, there's a lot of professional development that boards need to undertake and resources that local boards need to have access to in order to help train and nurture and grow great leaders on their campuses. And I've seen it in one district, but I know it's up and down the state. And when we've done searches at our local level, we're always surprised and somewhat disappointed that there's not even a more rich pool of great candidates that we would want to select from. But then what was so gratifying was to see that others are taking on this challenge and taking on it effectively, using research and best practices and knowledge and trying to disseminate that throughout the system, not only in California but around the nation. So when I met with Josh, I said, you've got to come to our board and talk a little bit about what the Aspen Institute is doing. And it's my pleasure to introduce Josh Weiner from the Aspen Institute to share a little what's happening at our board, and then invite the board to engage with questions and others. And I don't know if Chancellor Harris wanted to offer some comments, but welcome, Josh. And we look forward to hearing what's going on, what you're up to, and then tell us about how you can help us create a pipeline of leaders in the system.
Terrific. Well, thank you for having me, President Baum and Chancellor Harris and board members. It's a delight to be here, and I've invited Doug Houston to join me here today. There are a few people since we put out our hiring tools and some of our research on leadership that have used them, and I thought actually before I got started I'd hand it over to Doug just for a moment to talk a little bit about his perspective on leadership from where he sits, if that's okay, and then I'll go into a little bit about our research, about excellent community colleges very briefly, and then the qualities of leaders we've found that have enabled colleges to achieve much higher levels of student success than one might predict given the student bodies that they're serving. Our theory at the College Excellence Program is that what colleges do matters. And while we absolutely need to assess college performance in the context of the students they serve, even controlling for those things, you can find really dramatic differences in the performance of students. And so it's our view that what colleges do matters, and it's our view that what leaders do matters quite a bit. But I'll get into that after Doug speaks just for a moment about his perspective.
Very good, thank you. And President Baum, I appreciate you taking most of my comments. We can move a little bit more quickly through this, I suppose. But if I could just set the context, I'm starting my 25th year in the California Community College system, and I've watched, like many of us, one initiative after another start to gain a foothold at our institutions and then essentially evaporate for a number of reasons. From Program for Improvement to Partnership for Excellence and now the Student Success Initiatives. All well intended, all well designed, and yet they aren't institutionalized. They're just not sustained. And I would submit to you that that's primarily because of leadership and some of the challenges we have in developing, fostering, and supporting leaders. Institutions of higher education are by nature change resistant. That's not an editorial comment, that's just an observation. I mean, that's a strength that we have, but it also stands in the way of our implementing practices and making changes that we've identified that we need to. So if I could characterize leadership, and this is perhaps a Doug Houston view of the notion of leadership, it's particularly in higher education, it's individuals who can be change agents in a consensus culture. So maniacally driven to accomplish outcomes, entrepreneurial, innovative, and I would submit to you, though, that there isn't a whole lot of literature in the field, at least not until recently, as to how to cultivate these leadership competencies. So if you could flip to the next slide. In fact, about a decade ago, the Association for American Community Colleges undertook to develop a framework for administrative competencies at the community colleges around the country. And this has been the state of the art, if you will, for about a decade. This is what, presumably, according to the field, administrators need to be competent in order to lead their institutions. Honestly, as I've mulled this over the last decade, while I very much respect the work that went into it, I don't see these kinds of competencies really being what we need to drive and sustain innovation in our institutions. And so the point being that leadership and administration are not one and the same, and leadership competencies and administrative competencies are not, in fact, equal. And so, and in each of the institutions that I've served, I've been party to the development of local leadership development programs, but we've struggled with a framework, a definition of leadership that really fit in our context. And so about a year and a half ago, I learned of some of the work at Aspen and paid a visit to Josh and was really engaged by the work that they're doing, and we've been working with Aspen since to incorporate some of this research into our own hiring practices and our own local leadership development programs.
Thanks. So just as a backdrop, I lead the higher education programs at the Aspen Institute. And we just were founded 5 years ago, and 75% of our work is with community colleges. And that's really a reflection of the importance of the sector, the fact that the sector does not get the resources that it needs relative to other sectors of higher ed, and the fact that it is serving the students of tomorrow. We don't succeed as a country if community colleges don't succeed. And I don't believe that to be hyperbole. I believe that to be true. But it is also true that community colleges, as other segments of higher ed, must do a better job. And so we believe that excellent colleges are ones that achieve higher levels of student success along 4 lines: completion, equitable outcomes, labor market outcomes after students leave, and learning outcomes. We believe that this is a 4-part integrated definition of excellence, and in all of our work we're looking for colleges that are able to accomplish that at better levels than others. Our community college work is divided into 2 big chunks. One is the Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence. We've had 4 winners of the prize since we announced it. One of them, Santa Barbara City College here in California, 2 in Florida, Santa Fe and Valencia, and 1 in Washington State, Walla Walla Community College, which is among them the rural community college. And then the New College Leadership Project. And I just, in 2 minutes, want to jump through the prize. I can't go through all of the methodology and findings, but I think there are just 2 slides I want to show about outcomes, because I think often when we look at colleges and we see incremental improvement or stagnant performance, the question is, what's possible? Well, I just want to show you a chart from Valencia College between 2007 and 2014 and what they were able to accomplish. An 84% increase in 6 years. Excuse me, that should now say, no, it is 6 years. 84% increase in 6 years in the Associates of Arts degrees awarded, a 46% increase in certificates and diplomas, and a 66% increase in Associates of Science, applied associate's degrees. This is at a time when enrollment was going up 40%, so some of that may relate to increased enrollment, but you can see that is a dramatic increase over a very short period of time. And by the way, nationally, when enrollments go up, we tend to see completion rates come down, not go up. So this is a phenomenal success story of what's possible. Valencia is 50,000 students in Central Florida on 4 campuses, 50% non-white students, 70% enter needing remedial education. Starting to sound familiar, like some of your urban institutions, right? This is not a school that's creaming. This is a school that is serving all of the students they have. I just want to show you, we also look at labor market outcomes, and you can see here that when you look at that, you can really find colleges that, Miami-Dade is an example of a college that's where 5 years after graduating, the average graduate is earning $63,000 a year. Now, the recent scorecard put out is all students who are leaving the college, not just graduates, so you won't find these data there. We're able to gather these data from state unemployment insurance agencies. But again, colleges can achieve exceptional outcomes even in contexts where we wouldn't expect them to have nationally leading outcomes. And so what is it that has enabled colleges to achieve exceptional levels of student success? Well, we've had 16 expert site visitors and a lot of data people working with us, and this is what we found leads to exceptional outcomes. Strong leadership and organizational culture is first there because it's the thing that came up first in all of our research work with everybody we worked with. Strong leadership and culture matters, and it is something that can be cultivated and developed. Culture resides in places and organizations. Leaders are not just born. Some of it is what they're born with and developed with, but can be developed. And so the question then is, what does this mean? What is strong leadership? And we partnered with the national nonprofit Achieving the Dream to look into the qualities of leaders in the Aspen Prize process and also their colleges that had seen the most rapid gains in student success over the first 7 years of the Achieving the Dream initiative. So what we did was we looked at these 15 colleges that had rapid gains. All of them had long-standing presidents, interestingly. There's a lesson there, right, which is that the 3 3/4 years which is the average year.
Yeah.
Probably not long enough. And so we did research to investigate the qualities of these leaders. And it's contained in the Crisis and Opportunity Report. This is available on our website. The findings that we had, that we came up with. And the 3 questions we were asking is, what are the qualities of exceptional leaders, meaning leaders of institutions that have seen dramatically increasing and high levels of student success? Second question is, what do trustees typically value in the hiring process? Are those things aligned? Are we hiring for the qualities that we've seen in these leaders? And then the third question was, are we developing the qualities through professional development programs? And so in the hiring process, what we found, and this is just a high-level summary of what we found, that when, and look, this is a generalization. There are boards that don't fit these categories. But to do this research, we interviewed 8 headhunters who had collectively placed 500 community colleges in their career, college presidents in their careers. And we asked them, in structured interviews, coded their responses, what do boards value in the hiring process? It was the best way we thought we could get at it, because if you interview any individual board member, they're going to reflect their own views, not the board's view. So what do boards of trustees or our hiring processes value? And what we found is that trustees sometimes value risk-averse candidates. They focus a lot on fiscal stability and strong external relationships. That's what we found boards tend to hire for. And what we really need is urgency and some willingness to take risks to improve student success. This is probably the biggest and most important finding, which is that, that boards and the process drive us towards candidates who will get along with lots of constituents and keep things stable. And in fact, if we need change, if we need improvement, there's a balance to that. Those things matter, but there's a balance to that, which is change management ability. And that gets to the second point here, which is that trustees often emphasize the capacity to build external relationships and frankly to sell, right? I mean, college presidents stand up and say, we're great, we're serving the community, right? They have to sell. They have to sell to you guys, they have to sell to the legislature, they have to sell to the local community. If there's a millage, they have to sell to the public generally. They have to sell to all their partners. But if you're going to inspire internal change, you frankly have to build urgency. So we hear presidents who say, you know, we've increased from a 12 to a 20% graduation rate in the last several years. That's terrific, but that means 8 out of 10 students fail. Is that okay? And they will say that publicly, and they'll talk about their plans to improve. But there's an acknowledgement that things are not okay if 7 out of 10 or 6 out of 10 students don't succeed. And that's risky behavior. They're willing to shut down programs and lead processes to shut down programs if needed. They're willing to shut down the athletic programs if the space is needed for something else. Now, they can't do that alone, which really leads me to the third point, which is that trustees often look for charismatic presidents, and they fall in love with candidates. We heard this time and time again in our research. They fall in love with a candidate who they think is just terrific. Well, sometimes that charisma stands in the way of somebody who understands how to lead in a shared control environment, in an environment which is decentralized, frankly, where departments are making decisions. Being able to understand how to drive change through a decentralized structure and be collaborative but also really clear and focused is rocket science. It's hard work. It's harder to make change in that environment than in a corporate environment. And if we're not looking for people who at once have a sense of focus and purpose and strategy, but also understand the need for collaboration, because they're not going to be the ones to make every decision every day, we're not going to find the leaders that we need. And when we look for charismatic leaders, often what we lose track of is that ability for people to communicate and listen and think hard about strategically how to help people understand purpose above all else, mission above all else, and drive all of the decisions of an organization through. So having found that, we then asked, okay, well, we have a sense of what you should look for in college presidents. How can we help the community college sector do this work? And so we put out, under a grant from the Kresge Foundation, Hiring Exceptional Community College Presidents, Tools for Hiring Leaders Who Advance Student Access and Success. These are tools that are open access on our website that are aligned to the qualities of exceptional leaders we see. So here are the 10 qualities that these tools are aligned to help you figure out whether a candidate has. Establishing urgency for improvement, building strong teams, taking strategic risks, communicating effectively, having a deep commitment to student access and success, being able to plan lasting internal change, somebody who's results-oriented, that has financial and operational ability, is an entrepreneurial fundraiser, and finally develops effective external partnerships. These are the 10 qualities that holistically we believe will enable you to have a change-oriented and successful community college president who will really improve student success. So what do we mean by tools? Well, there are 4 processes in there are 4 elements of a search process. One is you've got to set strategic priorities and hiring criteria. This is where we see boards fall down the most in the process, frankly. What they will often do is get together with the search consultant that they've already hired and say, well, we need a prospectus. We need something that's going to say to the field what we're looking for. And look sometime in the back of the Chronicle of Higher Education or any of the community college time. Look at the lists of things and ask yourself if you really know, in the advertisements for presidents. Just look at any of them. Ask yourself if you really know what they want, right? If you were a candidate, if you could figure out whether you were the right one for those jobs. They were not very well crafted. And so the most important thing is not to ask what do we want in a president, it's to ask what do we want our college to accomplish. What do we want our college to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years? And so our first tool is a protocol for asking the right questions. What do we want our college to accomplish? What's it good at, and what is it not good at? And what's going to need to change if we're going to overcome what it's not good at and capitalize on what it is good at to get there? Now let's ask about the qualities of a president that will help us get there. That's the question that we would suggest people need to ask. But you notice the president doesn't come into the conversation until the 4th question or the 5th question. So our first tool is what is the conversation that needs to happen in setting student success goals and aligning the characteristics that you're looking for that. We then have job announcement language, a scenario-based writing exercise, questions for interviews. We have a rubric for assessing candidates. On each of the 10 qualities, a protocol for reference checks, everything you need to go through. Now, to be clear, we're not a search consultancy. And the search consultant will have to work with the board on these tools. The other thing I would say is we don't presuppose that you will believe that these 10 qualities are precisely what you're looking for. When Doug used the tools, I think he said that they agreed that 7 of them were important. Cindy Miles just reported that she used the tools for 2 of her searches. I think the important point is it's a structured process. And if you can come up with an idea of what you're looking for that goes beyond what we traditionally have done. So what have we traditionally done? What are the conversations like? I'm on the board of the University of the District of Columbia and our community college committee, which is in essence the governing body for our community college. And the conversation, faculty member talk about one thing and members of the business community talk about another, and everybody brings their own perspective to the table. And frankly, we talk about the last president, because if you didn't like the last president, you want somebody who's different. Heard from somebody once that they were told they didn't get a job because they were told they stood behind the lectern to give all of their answers, and that's what the prior president did, and they didn't like the prior president. I mean, you laugh. We laugh, but this really is what's in people's minds. So if you don't start by asking, what are we looking for, and align your tools so that you can really look for it through the process, you're much more likely to come up with a least common denominator. Molly Broad, the president of the American Council on Education, likes to say that college searches begin with the faculty deciding who they don't want. And they get removed. And then the board discusses who they don't like, and they get removed. And whoever's left standing becomes president. And that's her statement about this from decades in higher ed. I think the point about this really is intentionality. So these tools are online, and they're modifiable. They're not PDF'd. You can pull them down. You want to just use 4 questions in your interviews and 4 elements of the rubric, use that. If you just want to use job announcement language, use that. We don't presuppose that our tools are the holistic process everybody will use. But we do believe embedded in it is an intentionality and a series of opportunities, frankly, to align presidential hiring with student success. I can speak for a moment. I can break here. Doug can talk a little bit about how he's used the tools. We also are doing work on professional development as well, and I'm glad to talk about that, where we found misalignment between the professional development opportunities for presidents and what it is that these leaders do and what we're doing on that side. But let me pause there for a moment and just see where you'd like to take it from here, because I'd rather this be more of a conversation, answer your questions about the hiring process, and certainly we can move to the professional development as well if you'd like, but I really leave that to you.
I understand the hiring process, and then where does it go lower in so that there's people who are actually coming up through the system? Because we're working very closely with UC Davis to also create a leadership academy for this, or institute for the state of California. And again, it came up in our workforce conversation yesterday. In San Diego, they have great regional cooperation. They said they go to other regions where there's 11 new presidents. Half of them are with colleges under accreditation sanction. It's hard to kind of develop those long-term, make that long-term progress. And we've talked about basic skills. We're not going to be able to, if we have a rotation, a constant rotation at the top, how are we going to make progress in some of these issues? But how do we build a leadership pipeline? Not just the interview process, but how do we build that pipeline?
Yeah, it's a great question. So that's really the other half of the work. And to be clear, we have such turnover in college presidencies today that we wanted to put something out that was useful right now, because people are frustrated that they don't have ways of attracting and hiring presidents that are aligned with their student success goals. The flip side of it is, how do we develop a pipeline? And that's really a longer-term proposition, but a hugely important one. And I'm really glad to hear that you're thinking about that, and really excited about the partnership that you're developing with UC Davis. I think that's a terrific idea. It's similar to some ideas that we're pursuing in other places as well. So, the other part of what we found was that we looked at 15 or 16 programs, and we reviewed the curricula. Some traditional PhD, EDD programs, and some non-traditional programs, meaning the affinity groups that offer weekend boot camps for new presidents or for rising presidents. And we looked at all their curricula, and what we found was, frankly, that they were not focused on student success. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. They were focused on helping people understand how to fit into systems and not get kicked out the door, right? I mean, it was really, I hate to say it, but it was about some basic skills that you need to know. But I was an ACU fellow, and we didn't spend much time on student success. We learned how to work with the board. We learned how to do enrollment management. We learned how to deal with athletic issues. We learned a bunch of things that are very important to know, but we didn't really talk about. And this is the leading program for aspiring college presidents, mostly 4-year around the country. So we started to ask the same question, which is, how can we help? So we're building 11 curricular units. A lot of us put out reports that look like this, that tell us what it is that should be done, but we don't put enough reports out that look like this, which are tools to get it done, open access tools. And so these 11 curricular units are trying to take what we know about what leads to high levels of student success, that chart that I showed, and unpack it so it can be taught. So really helping with exercises, group exercises, videos, readings, leading questions. It's a curriculum. They're curricular materials that will be open access, that anybody can use and modify as they see fit. And so we're building these 11 units, and here are 5 of them. Developing the qualities of exceptional leaders. That's really an exploration of these leadership qualities. How do you define student success? You know, we often say student success and we mean graduation. But graduation isn't the only definition of student success. How do we embed that 4-part definition into our work? How do we do change management? That's Unit 3. We're building out a leading change management unit that anybody can teach. Partnering for collective impact. How do you work outside of the institution with K-12, 4-year colleges, employers, community-based organizations, and then embedding equity. And then we get into the strategies for excellent colleges, and that's where guided pathways and redesigning developmental education, et cetera, come in. So these are going to be coming online early next year, and they're being used already. So we have a program with Stanford University that we've just announced that's starting next summer for 40 aspiring community college leaders from all over the country. Look, to be really clear, we have a huge capacity issue for developing leaders. And I understand your program will be a PhD EDD program, is that correct? Or continuing?
The PhD EDD program already exists. The Institute or the Center for Policy Development and Leadership Development will be for sitting leaders or aspiring leaders in the system.
Terrific. So I will tell you, we've decided to put together a year-long program with 19 instructional days for 40 aspiring leaders from across the country every year. That is a drop in the bucket. What you are going to do, even in California, won't be able to meet all the demand. So I just want to be really clear that we are delighted to hear whenever folks, especially in California, and you guys are the epicenter of community colleges in the country. I mean, if any place ought to have a program like this, it's here. So I really commend you for building this. So we are building that. We are, the state of Virginia has contracted with us to put on a series of weekend programs for their 23 sitting presidents. And we just finished the first of those, and they thought it went quite well. We are working with Achieving the Dream for 100 college presidents from around the country over the course of the next year to come together and learn 1 or 2 of these over a weekend. It's 25 at a time. So there are a lot of contexts in which this can be taught. Our idea is we know some things about leadership development. Frankly, the state of the field is not advanced as far as it could. There are a lot of good things happening, but there's a lot more that should happen. And so we're making these units available for folks to use, and would be delighted to talk about how we can be helpful in your work. We're a nonprofit, so we're not
And
we're
our
not here
new
to...
CEO of the League of California Community Colleges is here too, so I'm hoping you connect with them too. But I want to open it up to the board to see if there's any questions or reactions. Member Malyamond.
It sounds very exciting, and I'm going to share it with people that I know also, your website and information. Do you have an opinion about when schools are looking to hire, sometimes they feel very strongly it has to be from within our state because of our rules? Do you have an opinion if we're looking for aspirational presidents? Is it okay to look outside our state?
Well, I would say it's definitely okay to look outside the state. It's a really interesting question. I think the shared governance practices in California, the unionization of faculty is a factor that matters, that people have having some familiarity with those things can help you hit the ground running in a different way. That said, this isn't the only place that those things exist. They are extensions of things that exist. And anybody who's in any of the big unionized cities in the country will be dealing with the unionization question, and frankly, pretty similar issues of shared governance that come along with that. And so what I would say is, context matters. If you're going to bring somebody in from a different context, asking how they're going to be able to lead internal change within that context matters. To me, the first and most important thing is recognition. I think if people don't recognize that a unionized decentralized shared governance system, more than being in an at-will system without those, some places don't even have tenure. If people don't recognize that there are some differences, that's probably not a really good sign. But there are terrific folks outside of the state, frankly, outside of the community college system that may have been at four-year colleges who are interested, and occasionally outside of higher education. I know that may not be readily accepted, particularly if they don't have a PhD. It's hard. Our supposition is that out of the 40 fellows we bring into this inaugural class in our fellowship, that about 35 will be pretty traditional, that they will be in that sort of vice president place or dean within the community college system. That's what we're anticipating. I think there are other leadership programs in other sectors that have tried to bring people from outside, and they've had some success, but it's hard. I think we all have to acknowledge that this, people often say, we need lots of leaders from outside the sector, or we should have no leaders from outside the sector. I think the answer is somewhere in between. I think we need to be open. If we start, though, by asking what are the qualities we're looking for, and we really hold ourselves true to that, and then we've got candidates from in and outside of the sector, I think we can start asking the question, right? If you've got the qualities and you're from outside the sector, what is that compared to? That's compared to what? If we can start from that question of what we're looking for in qualities, and look, some boards may say we want somebody who's got at least 10 years of community college experience. That's not an unreasonable thing to decide. But if we start with that and hold ourselves accountable as a group to that, I think we're much more likely to answer that question effectively than if we decide as the candidates come through. Oh, they can't do the job because they're X. I think that conversation happens because we didn't have the prior conversation.
Thank you.
I think we have a desire to kind of incentivize some of the system-wide reforms too, because in the last round there wasn't a single California community college that was recognized with your as one of the excellent colleges in the system, and we're trying to hold our system accountable for those student success metrics that you identified that are important to do that, and have led, I think, the nation in accountability and in posting the data and things like that. So we're looking forward to having more resources like this to develop and empower boards to make good decisions on selecting leaders. Any other comments, Member Alvarez?
Doug, thank you, Josh and Doug, for presenting. For specifically, Doug, you've worked using these strategies in the state of California. Can you give me some examples of what has worked for you and in your district specifically?
This last round, we just hired 2 college presidents within the last year and a half, both of them using the 5 key leadership attributes that are documented in Aspen's Crisis and Opportunity White Paper. We actually we use them informally in the search for one of our presidents. Actually, 2 slides forward. So those are the attributes that are identified from the Crisis and Opportunity White Paper. But the point being that these are attributes of leadership, and so we used these criteria informally in a search for one of our college presidents, and we're very satisfied with the outcome. More so because of how it changed our expectations, how it led the faculty and the administrators at the college to reframe what they were looking for, and to ensure that we had alignment. That their interests were aligned with mine and those of our district's board. Then most recently, we actually formally incorporated these into the search for our Yuba College president. And I marveled at how it changed the dialogue in the hiring process. The faculty leadership, the administrative leadership, staff leadership from the college, really reframing what they were looking for, less around how many heartbeats someone had in community college administration, and more how open they would be to risk, acknowledging that in that case that the college was looking for change and that they wanted someone who would not be risk adverse. So what we've since done, if you could go to one more slide, what we've since done now is we have formally incorporated these criteria into the search for our next tier of administrators. We staffed four academic deans and one of our campus provosts, and we will use it for a vice president search in this coming year. But moreover, we've embedded them as the performance expectations for performance evaluations. We're building them into an internal administrative leadership development program that's already several months launched. And I was tickled when in our governing board's self-evaluation several months ago this summer, our board acknowledged that if they're holding me accountable to these kinds of leadership attributes, then let's find a way to embed them in the board's own criteria for its self-evaluation. So I think we're enjoying some success, very early success, but back to a point that Chancellor Harris raised, I think really for us the next step as a system will be through our Leadership and Policy Institute with UC Davis, really working for a common vocabulary around leadership and leadership expectations.
And what drove you to go to this new approach? I mean, how did you get there, and what drove you there?
Failed search. I actually, honestly, the search process for one of our college presidencies and I were on divergent paths. And rather than introducing my definition of leadership, I found an external and arguably credentialed, if you will, definition of leadership. And it was well received, far more articulate than my definition might have been. But it really was, the governing board and I had intended that we needed to engage in some substantial reforms in our district. And I felt pretty strongly that the college presidents were pivotal in that. And one search went well and the other one didn't, and so we redoubled our efforts and used this as a framework.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? We appreciate you coming all the way from Washington, D.C. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one last thing, which
Sure.
is that we have gotten a grant from the Kresge Foundation to work with boards on these tools. And so whether it's a presentation to a board that's beginning a search process or knows that a year from now it will have one, whether it is that you're in a search process and you want somebody to review documents or facilitate a meeting of boards of trustees, we actually have the capacity now to do a bit of that work. We have typically charged for that just to cover our costs. We're a nonprofit that is project-based entirely. This will allow us to reduce the fee for that or eliminate it if it's a college that is struggling financially to have ends meet. So this is only the third state that we've presented. And one of them was Rhode Island, which has one community college, and they just filled the search using our tools. So we're done with Rhode Island, and then we were in Michigan, and now we're here. So I would just encourage folks that if you know folks who have an interest in this, we have some capacity to help. And we have a particular interest in this because, frankly, we want to make the tools better. This is the first time out of the gate. Conversations with Doug were helpful. I got a call from somebody who was using the tools, and we have a writing exercise, and they expressed a concern that they had the writing exercise. They had given it to 15 candidates, and it took too long to review them, and was that the right number? And we were silent as to when you did the writing exercise and with how many, and that was a really good conversation. It helps us get better. So I would encourage anybody, if you use these without working with us, please let me know how it goes, and if you made them better, how you made them better. But also know that we understand that the real work is here. We understand that you all are doing the work, and if we can be helpful at all in accomplishing that, please let us know. Thanks.
This is a great introduction to the work that you're doing, and I look forward to hearing more and hopefully seeing you all in Washington or elsewhere. And Doug, thank you for your leadership in the system and helping share that. And I know you have a plane to catch later, so
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go on to our next item. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there information in the back there that if people want to follow up? I assume there is. We're going to, looking at the schedule, we're going to take an item out of order and then break for lunch and then start up again. We will go to our Board Energy and Sustainability Award Program. So, Chancellor, item 4.5.
Thank you, President Baum, members of the board. I'm going to ask Dan Troy to join me up here, but what we would like to do at this point is to present to you the 4th Annual California Community Colleges Board of Governors Excellence in Energy and Sustainability Awards. Now, the objective of this program is to highlight and reward excellence in energy efficiency and sustainability by our districts up and down the state. And the board has done this in partnership with California Community College Energy Efficiency Partnership, and we're really pleased to announce the winners of this year's award. As we present them, we're going to ask them to come up and be acknowledged and get some photographs. And in keeping with the theme of this program, these awards are all made from recycled glass, so we try to practice what we preach here. Each of the award-highlighted colleges that are recognized today implemented energy projects that excelled in meeting the goals of the Proposition 39, the Clean Energy Jobs Act, and all of these projects were approved for funding during years 1 and 2 of Prop 39, and they have subsequently been completed prior to June 30 of this year in order to be considered for these awards. The projects were scored using a metrics that align with the Prop 39 objectives for annual energy cost savings, project completion schedule, job creation, project economics, and are defined by the savings to investment ratio. Now, the colleges that we're recognizing today, there will be 2 in number. Best in overall project, one for a large district and another for a small. And then additionally, we're going to give some awards for colleges in excellent performance in best retrofit project and best commissioning project. And then we will present the annual Board of Governors Sustainability Champion Award. So we'll begin with the first college to be acknowledged, and this is the category for best overall project in a large district. And it's a pleasure to ask to come to the front of the boardroom, Mount San Antonio College, for its Central Plant Tie-In Project, and Dr. Bill Scroggins, the president of the college. Okay, Dan, are you going to do the next one?
I can if you'd like.
Oh, no, let's see. This. Yeah. Do I have the next one? Where is it here?
No, you're right. I can.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. I'm going to use a microphone. The Board of Governors Award winner for the best overall project in the small district category is College of the Sequoias for its exterior lighting project. Accepting this award on behalf of the college is President Stan Carrizosa. To tell you a little bit about it, College of the Sequoias engaged in Southern California Edison's technical support through the CCC-IOU partnership in year 1 of the Prop 39 to help score an exterior lighting retrofit project at its Visalia campus. As an outcome of this study done by Edison and $40,000 in utility incentives, the college was able to undertake this exterior lighting project to replace the old high-pressure sodium lights. The resulting savings will amount to 157,000 kilowatts hours per year and approximately $20,000 on their yearly electric bill. So congratulations, Stan. Nicely done.
And let me remind you, I didn't give you the details on Dr. Scroggins' project at Mount San Antonio. They replaced existing chillers in 2 of their buildings that resulted in an annual savings of 800,000 kilowatt hours and 75 kilowatts, with a subsequent energy bill reduction of $105,000 of the taxpayers' money saved. Thank you, Bill.
I think Prop 39 is a very good use. The next Prop 39 award category is for retrofit projects. The Board of Governors award winner for the Prop 39 retrofit project is Orange Coast College for its interior lighting retrofit. Accepting this award on behalf of the college is Jerry Marchbank, Senior Director of Facilities Planning and Construction.
We need a mark.
Orange Coast College achieved significant energy savings by retrofitting a vast majority of the campus's 32-watt T8 lamps with 25-watt T8 lamps and new ballasts. The verified energy savings for this project are approximately 628,000 kilowatt hours and 138 peak kilowatts, reducing the campus energy bill by more than $80,000 per year. The project cost approximately $887,000 to implement. However, with $150,000 in Southern California Edison energy incentives and more than $722,000 in Prop 39 funds, this significantly reduced the district's direct cost to $14,000. So that's a great bang for the buck.
The next Prop 39 award is for commissioning projects, and the board is awarding this to Santiago Canyon College for its retro commissioning of its science building, and accepting the award today are Raul Rodriguez, the Chancellor of the Rancho Santiago District, and Carrie Mastamuto, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Facilities. So if you all will come forward, please. While they're coming up, I'll tell you that they improved the efficiency of the ventilation system in the new science building with a $405,000 project funded in part with Prop 39 funds and $112,000 of investor-owned utility energy incentives. Because of the airflow and pressurization issues with the building, the supply fans needed to be operated continuously, well beyond the normal building occupancy hours, and this retrofit project resulted in significant savings of approximately 383,000 kilowatts and 20,700 therms per year because of the large exhaust fans that could be shut down and generally operated in a more efficient manner. Congratulations.
Additionally, we'd like to recognize the honorable mention winners for the best overall project and retrofit categories. The honorable mention award winner for best overall project in the large district category goes to Santa Ana College for its campus-wide interior lighting retrofit. The honorable mention award winner for best overall project in the small district category goes to Victor Valley College for its variable frequency drives on HVAC units. The honorable mention award winner for a Prop 39 retrofit project is Irvine Valley College for its exterior lighting retrofit. Congratulations to all of our honorable mention award winners.
Before I make the Sustainability Champion Award, which is the final one, I would like to ask our energy partners that are with us today to stand up and introduce yourself. I know you're across the back. If you just stand up and tell us your company and your name, we'd appreciate that. Start with you. We could not do this without our partners. Please give them a round of applause. And And last but certainly not least is the presentation for the annual California Community Colleges Sustainability Champion Award. This award recognizes an individual demonstrating exemplary leadership in energy and sustainability efforts. This year's Sustainability Champion Award goes to an individual who has been a leader in sustainability for his district, as well as a mentor and advisor to other districts throughout the community college system. He's been an integral member of the partnership outreach team and management team working with districts throughout the state on Prop 39. He's been actively involved in participating in campus education forums, district outreach, and providing assistance to other districts and the Chancellor's Office in energy and sustainability. In addition, he was also instrumental in the creation of the California Community College Sustainability Template, which guides districts through the creation of their own comprehensive sustainability plans and has been implemented throughout the state. This year's Sustainability Champion Award goes to Fred Diamond, Director of Facilities at Citrus Community College District. Fred, come on up.
All right.
We okay?
Let's give our winners all one more round of applause.
Okay, great. So do you want to do Vince's report or do you want to publish? Yeah, right.
I used to do that, you know.
One of the most enjoyable parts of the job is actually being able to recognize best practices and some of the excellent innovators within the system, so I appreciate that. And I'm glad to see some of our industry partners are here with us to join in that celebration. We're going to go ahead and take our state and federal legislative update, and then we are going to break for lunch and start our next set of topics. So if you could turn to item 4.4 in the agenda.
4.4.
Thank you. So President Baum, Vice President Estolano, members of the board, Chancellor Harris, I'm pleased to provide you with the state and federal legislative update. This will be a relatively brief update. I would like to start with the state legislative update, which is item 4.4 on your agenda and can be found on page 79. In addition to the materials that are in your binder, this morning I've distributed an updated legislative bill matrix that reflects the latest actions taken by the legislature.
We did not get it.
You did not get it.
Could you pass that out? It's the newest one.
And we did that just because in producing the board items, the legislature had not yet adjourned, so we wanted to make sure that you had the most recent actions that were taken by the legislature when they adjourned on September 11th. So rather than review the entire list of bills, I think I would like to summarize a few key points and then respond to any questions that you might have. So earlier this month, we concluded the first year of the two-year legislative session with the legislature recessing on September 11th. They will reconvene for the second year on January 4th, 2016. I think we've had a relatively good legislative year. We tracked approximately 200 bills, 50 of which had a significant impact on higher education generally and the community colleges in particular. I would like to note that we had only one bill of concern that made it to the governor's desk. This was Senate Bill 42 that deals with the creation of a higher education office of accountability and performance, and we had some concerns with that legislation around the lack of participation and representation of segmental representatives, and this was an issue that was expressed across the board by the community college UC, CSU, and private institutions as well. Everything else that we either opposed or expressed concern over died or was held as a 2-year bill to be taken up again in 2016. And I'll note that there's a summary of SB 42 on page 85 of your agenda. Fortunately, I think our most significant legislative accomplishment this year was the passage of AB 288. A summary of that bill is on page 81 of your agenda. And this is the board's sponsored legislation to encourage and expand concurrent enrollment. This is where high school students enroll in community college courses, either for college credit or high school credit. Chancellor Harris mentioned this bill during yesterday's discussion about basic skills and noted the benefits of working with high schools to better prepare their graduates to develop college level, to be ready to do college level coursework. This is the first concurrent enrollment bill in several years, and the only one this year to be approved by the legislature and sent to the governor. I would like to note the tremendous efforts of the League, which was a co-sponsor of this measure, as well as the LA Community College District, also a co-sponsor, and their representative here in Sacramento, Mark McDonald. So this was really a collaborative effort, and we're quite pleased that the bill is on the governor's desk, and cautiously optimistic that we will have a signature prior to the October 11th deadline for him to take action on bills. I would also like to note 2 other bills dealing with accreditation, and this will likely come up later as you have the presentation on the accreditation task force bill. And this is AB 1385 and AB 1397. These are noted on page 85 of your agenda. Both of these bills were held by Assemblymember Phil Ting, who represents the San Francisco area. And this was done after we expressed significant concern with him that we felt the legislation was premature given the release of the Accreditation Task Force report and the need to bring its recommendations to the Board of Governors and allow the board to deliberate and provide guidance before taking legislative action. So those are 2 bills that will come back next year in January, and hopefully we will be able to engage in dialogue with the Assembly member about what are the appropriate steps forward based on the guidance and recommendations we receive from the board later this year. In addition to these 3 bills, I would also like to know that we saw legislative changes in terms of leadership announced shortly before the legislature adjourned. We have 3 members assuming leadership positions. All of 3 have direct connections to community colleges. In January, Anthony Rendon will take over as the new Assembly Speaker. He represents the 63rd Assembly District just north of Long Beach, and he attended the Cerritos Community College District. Now, he came in under the new term limit regime, so he is able to serve until 2024. So we may see a much longer tenure of Assembly leadership in the Speaker's position. In addition, taking over immediately, Jean Fuller is the new Senate Republican leader. She represents the 16th Senate District, and this is in the Bakersfield and Barstow area. I know those of you who went through Senate confirmation are familiar with Senator Fuller. I think she's been a tremendous supporter of community colleges. She is also a graduate of Bakersfield College. And then lastly, in January, Chad Mays will be the new Assembly Republican leader, and he represents the 42nd Assembly District. This is just east of Riverside, including Yucca Valley, Palm Springs, and Palm Desert, and he attended Copper Mountain College. So I think it's pretty unique that we have members in these legislative positions who have personal direct experience in contact with community colleges, and they've been supportive certainly in their tenure here in Sacramento. So that's really the highlights of the state legislative program that I wanted to mention. I would like to mention a couple of items regarding our federal legislative update, and this is on page 91 of your agenda. And this will be brief as well. Congress was on summer break in August, so there was really no movement on federal legislation. However, we did see a few announcements in mid-September. On September 12th, the White House released the college scorecard, and then on September 14th, announced changes to simplify the free application for federal student aid. Now, we do have some concerns with the scorecard, and we're in the process now of preparing comments for the U.S. Department of Education. I don't necessarily need to go through the details of that now, but I will say they're fairly significant, given what appears to be a heavy bias toward four-year baccalaureate degree institutions, and what appears to be really maybe a lack of familiarity and understanding of community colleges, the students that we serve, the fact that many of our students are pursuing transfer in addition to certificates and AA degrees, and the transfer function really isn't reflected in the scorecard. So I'm sure you'll be hearing more about that, and we will be communicating those concerns to federal policymakers. In addition to that, I do expect to see some federal activity in the coming days, and this is primarily because we're coming to the end of the federal fiscal year, which is on September 30th, and Congress has yet to act on its 12 spending bills or do a continuing resolution. If those items are not done by October 1st, then we could be seeing a shutdown of the federal government, which in the past has impacted the U.S. Department of Education's ability to monitor and administer its programs, particularly financial aid. So those are things we'll be watching very, very closely. That said, I don't anticipate that we will be seeing much movement on some of the larger federal policy issues, such as reauthorization of the Higher Education Act and those sorts of things, particularly as we're moving into an election cycle. So that really concludes the specific remarks that I had around the state legislative program and the federal program. I'm certainly happy to take any questions that you might have on particular bills or activities that we've engaged in this past session.
Okay, we'll open up to board member questions. Member Core?
The question I had was on SB 172, which is K through 12. They are going to exempt the CASI as a requirement to graduate, and it says that it's only going to be through. Well, I'm confused because it's on SB 725. It says that the class of 2015 is exempt, and in SB 172 it goes through the 2017 to 2018 school year. And my only concern is if students don't pass the CASI the first time, they're given it in 10th grade, they get put in basically a basic skills English class or a math class to help them improve. And I was just wondering if they're going to remove this exemption, if it's going to carry on. Because if it carries on into the next year, that ripple effect is going to pour on to our colleges, and a greater need for basic skills is going to have to be implemented.
Right. So a couple of things happened with the California high school exit exam. One was a 3-year suspension of the KC. I think in large part is because we're seeing the transition to the Common Core state standards, and you have associated with those a new set of assessments, the smarter balanced assessments. So I think you had this issue of having multiple K-12 assessments, and I think a conversation about which are the appropriate assessments for determining what students need to know and be able to do to graduate high school, and what they need to know and be able to do to be successful in college. In addition to that, there was a second piece of legislation that was put through because the Department of Education, through some administrative maneuvering or requirements, they had to eliminate the second giving of the KC this year, and that was a problem for some students who had failed the first administration of the exam and needed to take it a second time. The inability to take it a second time meant that they presumably might not be able to graduate high school and go on to post-secondary. So I think both of those issues were addressed by the Department of Education, and those are things that we're going to have to monitor going forward as we work through the implementation of the Common Core state standards and the assessments associated with that. And also, I think, have a larger conversation about the alignment between what's required to graduate high school and then what's needed for placement and admission to post-secondary education. And right now, that's a bit of a disjointed process, particularly when you're looking at UC and CSU, which uses the SAT or ACT for admission purposes.
Do you have any insight in whether or not the KC is going to be aligned with the new Common Core standards within the end of this year onto next year, or is there something that could continue?
I hesitate to predict what might happen with the KC. I think what you might see is more alignment with the smarter balanced assessments or whatever assessments are ultimately adopted for the Common Core state standards, and looking at those and how do they align with our own placement exams for community colleges and what UC and CSU use for admissions purposes. You may not see a reinstitution, if you will, of the KC, because I would say that then creates multiple assessments for students in high school, and some are higher stakes than others, and so I think there's conversation about how do we streamline that process and ensure that we're assessing students in the most important and effective way.
Member Albalos?
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. Question for you is, what two bills excite you the most, and which one is the one that causes you great concern?
I think the bill that excites me the most is the bill that was sponsored by the Board of Governors, Assembly Bill 288, to encourage and expand the use of concurrent enrollment in high schools. I think this has tremendous potential to, one, for high school students to make them aware of the opportunities and the possibilities of going to college, building a college-going culture. That bill is also focused on students who wouldn't necessarily avail themselves of concurrent enrollment. Traditionally, concurrent enrollment was around high-achieving students and students who were on a vocational education track. And there is some research out there that demonstrates that for those students who are somewhere in the middle, this can really be a game changer for them. In addition to that, embedded within the bill is language and a provision to use dual enrollment for those students who have been identified as not being where they need to be in terms of performance in math and English. And having that assessment done in the 11th grade, and our colleges working in partnership with high schools, provides an opportunity in the 12th grade to intervene, to figure out what can we do in that senior year of high school to get them to where they need to be, to where they can perform and do college level work when they come to our community colleges, UC or CSU, and they avoid basic skills instruction. I think you heard a lot yesterday about what's happening with basic skills. My own personal opinion is when you're addressing basic skills, once they're at the community colleges, you're really addressing the symptom as opposed to the root cause. The root cause is students are coming and they're not prepared. And I don't say that to blame the K-12 system. I think there's a disconnect there, and I think dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment offers a tremendous opportunity to break down that disconnect so students understand, here's what I need to do to go on to some level of post-secondary. And I would also say with AB 288, it's not just about going on to four-year institutions in pursuit of a baccalaureate degree or higher education, be it master's or PhD. It's looking at concurrent enrollment in the context of career technical education and developing pathways for even those students who want to come into the system and pursue a one-year certificate and go off into the workforce. So, I don't want to overstate necessarily. I prefer not to overpromise and underdeliver, but I do think it is a step in the right direction. And this has been an issue that we have been talking about for the better part of 5, 6, or 7 years, and there's been a tremendous amount of resistance around expanding concurrent enrollment in some measure because of some of the negative history from some years back, but also because there's this question about, is the state actually funding the same student twice to receive the same instruction? And we've put some provisions in AB 288 to ensure that that doesn't occur. And I think this is the first time in memory, in my recent memory, where we have, I think, indications from the governor's office and the Department of Finance that they're looking at dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment as an investment as opposed to a cost and something that pays off on the back end. So I really think that's probably one of the most significant pieces of legislation that we've moved this year. I certainly hold some promise for Senate Bill 42. I don't know what will come of that. This is the bill to develop an accountability and performance office for higher education. I think there is some need to have a statewide coordinating entity for higher education. Is SB 42 the vehicle for that? perhaps not, but I think that conversation ought to continue, and hopefully that's what we'll be able to do, is continue that in next year and figure out what's the appropriate mix. Particularly as someone noted earlier that we don't have the Post-Secondary Education Commission in place anymore, so.
Member Epstein?
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate you and your team on an excellent outcome. You looked through this list and virtually everything you wanted to get done got done, so great work.
Thank you.
Member Kaur?
Give one more question. So on AB 969, it's talking about districts being able to deny students based off their past criminal history. I think that one like kind of sets me off a little bit, because I think we see community colleges as a second chance for a lot of people, and if a district is able to deny someone based off like their past, is there gonna, do you know like the logistics of it, if there's gonna be an appeal process that the student might be able to go through? Or the way it's written, it just says like, it just seems like the district would have full authority on denying someone access.
So this is, I think, really an issue of disclosure, if you will. So currently for the UC and the CSU system, if a student is expelled from one CSU campus, they're expelled from the entire system. I think this was a way to note those students that have a suspension or an expulsion for a serious activity, if you will, where you're talking about sexual assault or something along those lines, that if they're enrolled at one college in one district and they seek to enroll in another college in another district, that college, that receiving college, is aware of that background. Ultimately, it's going to be up to that receiving college and district to make a determination, is that something that warrants those students not being admitted. So it really is a local decision, but it does provide, I think, additional information. And there's a lot of conversation happening right now, both at the state and the federal levels, around student safety, around sexual assault, around the ability to provide colleges and universities with more tools to ensure the safety of their students, faculty, and staff. So I know there's some concerns about how far do we take this, because I don't think we want to see our colleges and universities evolve into law enforcement agencies and taking on the role of local police and prosecutors and that sort of thing.
Because from what I understand, the way the bill's written, it doesn't state that it had to happen at a previous college. It just says that like if someone is committed like stalking or domestic violence, like it's not contingent on the past college reporting it. So that would be just based off their background history?
It would, and I would also note that this is one of the 3 bills authored by Assemblymember Doss Williams that was actually held. It's on the Senate inactive file. So I think some of these concerns that you're raising were raised previously, and that I suspect is what was factored into holding that bill. I think the other 2 are the ones that are advancing to the governor's desk.
This last question is, the president's gone around the country, and he was just in Michigan again, and talking about the college promise and making tuition free and things like that. Has there been any federal legislation to address increasing access to college?
So the president has proposed the America's College Promise. Embedded in that proposal is legislation to have the Congress provide grants to states to fund the free 2 years of community college. I think most folks that certainly I've spoken to in the conventional wisdom is that the Republican Congress is not going to provide that federal funding. So what I've seen the White House do is now pivot more toward a grassroots effort to have individual states and some colleges and districts sign up for the notion of a college promise, which, I'm not certain that many folks would argue against that. The issue, though, becomes is if the federal funding and the grants don't materialize, how do you then pay for that, in California, that additional 1/3 who aren't receiving Board of Governor fee waivers? And I would argue that California has been leading the charge in this arena. In 1984, when we implemented the Board of Governor fee waivers, because we implemented fees, that was a game changer for many of our students, and now I think it's 60%, maybe a little bit more, who are receiving those fee waivers. So I think it's been a a driver of a conversation, but likely I think it will be broadened to look at the total cost of college, not just fees, because I think when you look at books and housing and those sorts of things, so hopefully that will be brought into the conversation as well.
And I'm glad you raised that, and I want to thank Paige and the Chancellor and the team also for taking this opportunity this month to highlight the fact that California has been providing Board of Governor fee waivers. The Board of Governors have been providing fee waivers for 3 decades and have led the nation in this effort. And so I appreciate us actually getting that message out there as well. Well, thank you very much for a comprehensive report. And,
Thank you.
And so we will then take a break on federal legislation. I do not have a public comment on federal legislation. Wait, let's, so,
Second. Hey, Mr. Jha.
okay.
Okay, we have Mr. Jha, Alvin Jha.
Hey, I'm an ordinary common citizen.
You have 3 minutes.
I just want to offer you a differing opinion regarding Mr. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, regarding the Phil Ting legislation, you said it was premature. I have the opposite opinion regarding that. It is not premature. It is too late. It is too late. The other item I'd like to talk about is AB 404, sponsored by David Chu. It was passed unanimously, both houses of the legislature, regarding 4CO getting stakeholder or getting the community college input to give to Nasiki. I had the impertinence of writing a resolution. I don't know if you saw it or not. I know you're not going to do it, but I'd like to give you my ideas regarding it. So I'll just read that. This is my proposed resolution. Whereas Nasiki will be meeting in December 2015 for a compliance review of ACCJC as a follow-up on the Department of Education's January 28th, 2014 decision letter, which found ACCJC non-compliant in 15 federal recognition criteria. Whereas 34 CFR 602.13, acceptance of agency by others, is one of those criteria. Whereas by unanimous vote, the state legislature has passed Choose AB 404 with the Assembly voting 79-01 and the Senate voting 40-0. And whereas AB 404, if signed by the governor, would not take effect until 2016. Whereas AB 404 requires 4CO to transmit community college stakeholders' feedback regarding the accreditor's compliance with the recognition criteria. Whereas ACCJC's failure to meet the requirements of 34 CFR 602.13 has been exhaustively documented and reflected in the 828 Accreditation Task Force report. Now, therefore, be it resolved, and I hope you do it, although unlikely, resolve. Community College Board of Governors, 1, acts immediately in the spirit and legislative intent of AB 404. 2, fulfills its obligation pursuant to Education Code 70901 B4 to provide representation, and this is a quote from the Ed Code, provide representation, advocacy, and accountability for the California community colleges before state and national legislative executive agencies. And that's talking about the Department of Ed, okay?
Mr. Jha, your time has elapsed.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll hear you during the next
I just
session.
give one more sentence?
We've got.
Okay, I'll get it later.
Thank you.
Okay, but you need to submit a third-party comment.
Okay, well, thank you for that comprehensive report. It's 12:07 right now. We will break for 30 minutes and we will return at 12:40.
Okay.